So today we're looking at chapter 7, basic training methodologies, which means that when we say like training methodologies, we're talking about the things that maximize caloric expenditure, right? What are the things that, like, when you are putting together a program, will absolutely torch calories? So looking at this, our objectives today, we want to understand and communicate the rationale of cardio. We got to look at cardio because cardio is just the best way to burn a lot of calories. And we are going to look at resistance training and how both of those things can come together for weight loss goals. And when I say cardio, I don't necessarily mean that you have to, just get on a treadmill and go jogging. That's definitely not what I mean. We're going to talk a lot about like circuit training and stuff. I want to be familiar with some of these methodologies and how we can kind of use them. And then we need to implement them with the OPT model. So today, we're going to be looking at the OPT model for the first time, which is really cool because we haven't really spent too much on that in this program design class just yet. And that's a huge part of what we do. So, weight loss is going to be oftentimes, guys, it's the number one people are showing up to meet with a trainer. Generally, weight loss is the most common goal that we see in the gym, right? And so if we understand that, right, if we understand that like weight loss is the big thing, we need to know like, most of the ways that we can, impact positive like weight control. And so as we're looking at that, right, our goal here is to increase what is called EPOC as much as possible. And so this is a phrase that I always say, like this is like a joke that I've been making for years now, but we want to keep our EPOC levels really high. And what EPOC is it stands for excess post-exercise oxygen consumption. So you'll remember from physiology, we talked about how oxygen consumption is directly tied to calorie burn, right? Oh no, not at all. We're right in the intro. You're good, Charlie. This is still this is the first not learning objective slide. So the goal is to really kind of boost the number of calories burned during your workout, and that's great. But what it really does, that's super positive, is by boosting the calories that you burn during the workout, you actually are also boosting the number of calories that you will burn over the next, sometimes up to 72 hours. And so what happens is your body goes into this calorie burning mode, and it has to like make up for this oxygen deficit that you're creating. Your body's like holding on to all this energy, and then you burn a bunch of energy like crazy. And so your body's like playing catch up afterwards, right? This is often why, sometimes you might notice you feel really hot after a workout all day. Like your body temperature never comes back. That you're just like, I still feel warm from working out earlier. That's great. That's a good sign, right? That means that like your body's pumping blood like crazy, and it's working to kind of like catch up to all the intense activity that you did. So that's the excess, right? It's happening afterwards, and it's post-exercise. It's happening after we're done, and it's oxygen consumption, right? And so this big calorie burn here. And so I always tell my clients this. I'm like, I want you to burn plenty of calories while you're in the gym. But like, if I can get you to boost and burn more calories while you're sitting at home, that's going to be even more effective. And so, burning calories in the gym is good, but burning calories in bed is better. And then you're welcome to leave that up for interpretation. So it's my favorite thing to say. So taking a look at that, right? We want to have like complementary dietary strategies when it comes to our weight loss control, right? We want to like talk about how, okay, great, let's create like a calorie deficit with our diet, but we also want to implement that workout routine that is going to result in the greatest amount of EPOC possible, because that's how we can actually increase our metabolic rate. It may not necessarily be permanent, right? And this isn't necessarily like changing your thyroid or your hormones or anything like that. But what it is doing is it's ensuring that your body continues to burn extra energy in like small little ways. Then if we make a couple lifestyle changes in addition to that, we're just going to be a calorie burning machine. So this is one of my favorite parts, actually. If you guys go to your chapter, you'll read this when you do your reading today. But one of my favorite, this is one of my favorite chapters. It's right at the very beginning of this chapter here. So if we go, let's see here. What is chapter 7? What page is that? It's page 70. So right in the beginning here, this very first part, it's got a really great this chapter, this paragraph right here. So when you guys get to this today, pay special attention to this part because it really lays it out in a way that is super, super clear. But we did translate it over to the slides and over to the notes here. But here's what we see in clients who diet, right? So we got to remember like what a diet is. Like you know, it's a caloric deficit that you're creating, right? Like you are bringing in less calories than you're consuming, and so therefore your body is like, oh man, we still need to run this body, but we're out of like food energy. Where are we going to get our energy from? And so it's going to get it from the surrounding body. Now, ideally, it's going to get that from fat tissue, but it doesn't always get it from fat tissue, right? Because like, you know, your body is kind of like I don't know if you guys ever hear about this in the news, but like when a company is doing like mass layoffs, you know, we always hear about like, you know, they're firing like factory level workers and stuff, which sucks. But like, there's actually a lot of like layoffs that happen from the top as well. And the reason for that is because like those are the people who are being paid the most money, right? Like they have the largest salary, so it makes sense to like you can get rid of less people if you get rid of the people that burn the most, you know, dollars, right? Well, your body kind of has a similar approach when it comes to caloric burn, right? If your body's like, well, we're not using any of this muscle tissue, and this muscle tissue is burning a crap ton of energy. Remember, muscle burns about 4 times as many calories as like fat does, right? So if your body is going, all right, well, I got to get rid of something, and we don't really use this muscle, and it's burning the most energy, this is a prime candidate. Now, it's never going to like fully 100% prioritize only muscle, you know, like that's you know, luckily that's not really the case. But it is, you know, if you are not working out, it doesn't have any reason to keep that muscle around, right? So if we diet alone, what we typically see, and these are just some standard, you know, these are some common results. I'm not saying it will always be like this, but we'll often see about 69% fat loss and like a 31% lean mass loss. So let's look at a 200-pound client with 20% body fat, right? So 200 pounds, they got 20% body fat. That means they have 40 pounds of fat, right? So if they lose, if they diet alone all the way down to 180 pounds, that means that chances are they're going to lose, instead of just a straight 40 pounds of body fat, they're actually going to, 40 times 0.69, they're actually going to lose 27.6 pounds of body fat, and they're probably going to lose about 12.4 pounds of lean mass, right? Now, lean mass, it's water weight, it's, you know, it's bone tissue and muscle, and it's everything that's not body fat. But like that's a substantial amount of like muscle loss. They got they did succeed in like their weight loss goal, but maybe they didn't succeed in their body composition goals, right? So that's diet alone. We can see like 69% of the fat loss. So that's, you know, that's pretty good. It's not awful, right? But what if they started doing just like a little bit of cardio as well, right? So now they're starting to couple. It's like they do the classic dieting approach, right? The classic dieting approach. Of okay, I'm gonna diet and I'm gonna go for a run every day, right? Like I'm gonna diet, I'm gonna go biking, or I'm gonna diet, I'm gonna go for a walk every day. Well, what we see in like when you couple dieting plus a little bit of cardio is we suddenly boost the percentage of fat loss up, and we drop the percentage of lean mass loss down. So this is about a 8% difference here. It's pretty good, right? Like that's really quite decent, actually. Actually, sorry, 9% difference, right? So now suddenly, if somebody was 180 pounds, I'm sorry, if they were 200 pounds and they were 20% body fat and they wanted to, you know, get down to, I just realized that would take us down to that was like taking us down to 0% body fat. So I totally didn't even think of that. We never want to take our clients down to 0% body fat. Go back a scenario. Let's say they wanted to drop that down, they wanted to get down to 180. Right, and so like they want to lose 20 pounds, so 20 pounds of fat times 0.69. So if they lost 20 pounds, they would lose 13.8 pounds of fat, and they would lose 6.2 pounds of muscle. Okay. But now let's take a look at like what if it's like actually cardio, right? So they're going to lose 20 pounds, and now it's going to be 0.78% body fat. Now they're going to lose 15.6 pounds. That's only going to be a 4.4 pound loss in lean mass, which is much, much, much better, right? That's much more ideal because your body is going, okay, well, we clearly need some of our muscle mass because we're using it to perform this cardiovascular exercise, right? So simply by creating a little bit of like muscular cellular damage, right? Your body is going, oh, wow, okay, the muscles are getting beat up. It makes sense for us to develop more muscle mass or at least maintain it so that we can continue this physical activity. But then if we combine it with actual resistance training, so diet plus, I got exercise written here. I guess it should say resistance training. Now we're going to see that for every pound of lean mass lost, 97% of it will be fat mass and 3% of it will be lean mass, right? Which is a very substantial difference there. So again, if we have a client who loses 20 pounds, right, that's 19.4 pounds of fat loss versus 0.6 pounds of muscle mass, which is much, much, much better. And again, that's because while you are training, while you're resistance training, you're creating so much like muscular damage that your body is doing everything in its power to repair that muscular damage and keep your muscle mass. It's trying to preserve it because you clearly are using it, right? Go back to our weird CEO analogy earlier. We were talking about how they fire from the top. Well, if the company is hemorrhaging money and they want to like fire somebody who, yeah, maybe they have like a really expensive salary or something, but they're also the person who like every single year gives the company like new ideas and takes it in directions that are really, profitable and exciting, right? Okay, never mind. We're going to get rid of some people. We're certainly not going to get rid of that super valuable person, right? So that's where we look at like this idea of like diet and exercise. By telling like signaling to your body that we need our muscle mass, it's less likely to ditch it when we have like a calorie deficit. Does that make sense, guys? Any questions? All right. So through resistance training, it may be sufficient to raise the resting metabolism by 7% or equal to about 100 calories each day. So this is one of the things that we see. We see that like through exercise in general, right? Like really working pretty hard here. This can actually raise metabolic rates by 7%. Now, when I say this, remember, metabolism is much more complicated than just the traditional version. It's all those biochemical, it's all those chemical reactions, right? Every single one of them inside of our body. And so metabolism is definitely much more complicated than just how many calories you burn because you worked out. But go back to the other day when we looked at like what makes up our TDEE. Right? Remember we talked about the total energy expenditure for a person each day. Most of it, 80% of it is resting metabolism. And then 10% of it is thermic effective food. And then this is showing 10% from thermic effective activity. Usually thermic effective activity can be a little bit higher depending on how active your client is, right? And so like we see, if we could increase this pie slice right here, right, your thermic effective physical activity, that can raise your overall metabolism. It's not necessarily actually affecting your BMR, your basal metabolic rate. It's not having any effect on like your certain hormones and things like that, like your thyroid and things. Your genetics are kind of determining your caloric burn, but you are determining your caloric expenditure in terms of physical activity. And so like if you create a little bit of extra deficit there, right, it can raise your metabolism by around 7%. If we consider that entire thermic, pie chart there, we can raise that number by 7%. So if you're burning, 2,400 calories every day, and you raise that by just 7%, that's 150 extra calories every day, 168 extra calories every day. It's pretty freaking good, right? So that's kind of what we're looking for. And for everybody, 168 calories, right? They're showing this over the course of like a year here, right? 168 every day times 365 days a year, right? Like that's 61,320 calories, 3,501 pound of fat. That's 17 extra pounds of fat loss. You know, so if we're looking at like a client, who is in the obese category, and we just start getting them a little bit active, even without changing their diet, it can have really drastic, really positive effects here. Now, other things that we also want to have like a positive effect on is also getting our clients to change their habits, right? We talk about like our general habits here. And so this is where we want to improve like our non-exercise, so not related to anything in the gym, non-exercise activity, thermogenesis, so calorie burn, right? This is that NEAT we talked about the other day, right? We were looking at that Jeremy Ethier video where he's breaking down, like, I think it was like John versus Jim, right? They're both twins. They both are on the same diet, the same workout program, but John keeps taking the stairs, whereas Jim is exhausted after his workout, so he kind of relaxes. And so they were burning slightly different amounts of calories and having slightly different results, right? One of them had a standing desk, one of them was sitting all day. One of them was parking very far. One of them was parking as close as possible. And so like the side of activity that has nothing to do with the gym is also a huge part of the number of calories we burn, right? So non-exercise activity thermogenesis, this is the phenomenon that represents one's basic activities of daily living. It includes things like fidgeting, standing, and moving around, right? So this is where, a lot of times, like you talk about some people who just have naturally fast metabolisms. A lot of times I'm like, I don't know, man. Sometimes I think it's much less about metabolism and much less about, sort of what's happening in terms of like a metabolic rate, and sometimes I think it's much more about the fact that just like they were hardwired to be like a fidgeter, like in my family, we've kind of different builds, and from my mom's side to my dad's side. I inherited a little bit more of my dad's side. My mom's side tends to be a little broader, and my dad's side tends to be a little, we'll say, stringier. But you also look at my dad; he's a pretty like wiry guy, pretty thin dude. And he is fidgety, he's bouncy. He literally he gets yelled at constantly by his assistants at his job. Because my dad's kind of like, my dad has this bad habit of, he's a pencil tapper. So he'll like all day, just while he's thinking. And like, I'm like a whistler. Like we have a lot of nervous ticks in the Thompson family. We're constantly doing some activity to drive someone around us crazy. So like, this is like a fairly common thing. And part of me wonders, it's like, my dad's also a furniture mover, which is a very active job. But I think that explains a lot of like why, his metabolism. My mom would make a lot of jokes when we were growing up about how like easy it was for the two men in the family to be, friggin' skinny and stuff. But like, there's so many times where I think about it. I'm like, I don't know. I think it's just like, sometimes it's about the way you're hardwired, So NEAT plays a much bigger role than we kind of give it credit for a lot of times. We oftentimes think of calorie burns, we think of the gym, we think of like diet, but maybe sometimes it's that stuff that falls outside of the gym. Maybe it is people who are just like me. I will always choose like a little bit of like, a little bit of physical effort over like anything, over like convenience any day. Like I will take the first parking spot that I find, because then I don't have to think about like trying to search for a parking spot, which is going to annoy me. And yeah, that means that I have to walk a little bit farther, but like, I don't know, that doesn't bother me. And not everybody's like this. And so like, maybe that explains where some of these different body types kind of come from. I'm thinking of like 100,000 examples in my life of how like, I drive the people around me a little crazy sometimes, because I'm just like, let's walk it. And they're like, it's not, what? No. And it's like, you got to park and, redo the whole thing. Like, don't do that. Let's just walk it. It's like, it's been my stance on this like mask thing this whole time too. People people keep like, this is totally just me opinionated here. You guys can chime in here. This is totally not a lesson. But I can't really, I get like the mask thing is like slightly inconvenient, but it's just not that inconvenient. Like you hardly notice. I can't tell you how often I get in the car and I'm driving for 10 minutes before I'm like, oh yeah, I gotta take this thing off. And maybe that's just because I'm not a very comfortable person. I don't really seek out comfort very often. Or
Same
what?
way.
But yeah, I don't know. It's so funny to me. And like I keep hearing people like we're trying to get our frisbee game going, and some people want to play with masks on and some people don't. And it's like it's just not that big a deal, guys. Like I don't know. Then again, that it did cause me to get hit in the face on Saturday because of my mask. So maybe trying to be like fair in my arguments here. So we're starting to see that like it may be, and I love the sentence right here. It appears to be equally important as exercise when it comes to like burning calories and losing weight, like succeeding in your weight loss goals. Maybe it has less to do with the gym. Maybe it has more to do with our overall lifestyle choices, right? So how can we increase this? Well, park far away from your destination. Ensure that you're tracking your daily expenditure. This is one of the reasons why I actually do like pedometers. I really like Fitbits that are tracking how many steps you get in on a day. Sometimes it just minimizes errors. Now, do I think that like the number of steps is the most important thing in a weight loss program? No, that's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that like if you have a little bit of the data and you see it, and you're like, oh my God, like I just haven't burned that much energy today. And you're like, I lived a normal day. This actually, you know what? This was me yesterday. I kind of like I was glancing and I was like, man, my calorie burn is actually kind of low today. And I was like trying to think of why, and I couldn't really come up with a reason. I was like, I don't know what was different about my day yesterday, but I burned probably 300 less calories than I normally do. If it was like that, 3 or 4 times a week, that's a half a pound's difference, So that's a pretty substantial thing that we look at. This is, I really like pedometers. And then encourage your client to, I put take the stairs here. I remember when I did this, put take the stairs here in bold, because we used to have like, so if you showed up late for class in regular Sochi, what I used to do is I would say you can get 15 minutes back of your time if we would take breaks every hour on the hour. And I was like, for every 15 minutes, no, it was 5 minutes. That's right. What am I talking about? 15 minutes. I'd be the most charitable person ever if it was 15 minutes. I was like, I will give you 5 minutes back on your attendance if you go do a lap on the stairs. And so we were on the 5th floor, and so they would have to go, you'd have to go down to the bottom and come back to the top, and I give 5 minutes back. So if you're 15 minutes late for class, you had to do 3 laps on the stairs over the day. You tell me another teacher does awesome extra credit like that. So those are different ways we can increase our NEAT, right? Little things that like keep you active. Even just taking a minute to get up, walk around, do a lap around your house or a lap around your office and then sit back down. That's big. It makes a big difference. All right, any questions on that? We're going to kind of move into the workout part of it. Any questions before we get into the resistance training? Okay. So before we do, I do want to take just a second to introduce some of you guys. Charlie, I know you've seen this, but for those of you who are brand new, we got to introduce you to NASM's OPT model. And so this is something we're going to be looking at over the next coming days here in class. We're going to break this down and make it really clear. But when you look at the OPT model, it is a staircase that NASM designed, and it breaks down basically the 5 most common physiologic adaptations that your clients are going to make while they're in the gym. And so the 3 most common, the 3 biggest physiologic adaptations are, building for stabilization, building for strength, and building for power, right? So you think about like the idea of stabilization, right? Stabilization is how our body, learns how to control itself. This is your neuromuscular efficiency. Remember neuromuscular efficiency? We mentioned it in physiology, right? It's your nervous system's ability to recruit the right muscle at the right time for the right amount of force, right? So that's right. So that's stabilization. It's the idea that, like, as I'm doing a shoulder press overhead, my rotator cuff isn't necessarily doing very much rotary motion, but it is stabilizing as I go overhead, right? That's stabilization, right? As I'm squatting down, my knees are, experiencing like a little bit of shifting side to side, but for the most part, like, there are muscles pulling equally on both sides of the joints to keep that in the proper alignment. Then we've got this common goal of strength, and strength is a big one, right? There's different kind of categories of strength because we've got different categories of muscle fibers, right? We've got our type 1 fibers, we've got our type 2 fibers, we've got our type 2X fibers, right? So we've got there's kind of a broad range in terms of like how we develop strength, but the idea of strength is literally like, the ability to recruit a muscle and get something from point A to point B. That's it. It is your ability to overcome external forces, right? That's strength in general, right? How much tension can I generate in a muscle, and how much external force can it overcome? Maybe I can bench 200 once, okay, great. So then the amount of strength I have is 200 pounds, right? And then there's power, and power is your rate of force production. So it's like, it kind of piggybacks on this concept of strength. And so it's like, I'm going to take this moving something once, but I'm going to do it at a super explosive speed, right? So now it's like two people can both lift 200 pounds, but one of them can do it in half the time. That person who's moving faster in half the time, that person's more powerful, right? So those are sort of our three, we call those the levels of the OPT model. These are what determine your exercise selection, okay? So Cody, Andres, Kenny, this is how we pick different versions of exercise. We base it on what level they are in. So there's level 1, which is stabilization, level 2, which is strength, level 3, which is power. So now let's talk about like developing someone's chest, right? Well, what do I need to do first? I need to teach them how to use their pectoral muscles properly. And I need to teach their body how to stabilize while I'm doing chest exercises. So I'm going to choose a chest stabilization exercise. Okay. And so that chest stabilization exercise, maybe it is a single, it's a 2-arm, but single leg push-up, right? So I lift one leg up off the ground and I, move through that push-up. And so it's just slightly unstable because I have to balance, right? Or maybe it's a cable chest press, which is, a little bit wobbly, right? Or, I could make it even harder. I could say a single leg cable chest press. I'm standing on one leg. Now it's really wobbly, right? Or maybe I do a single leg, one hand on a medicine ball push-up, right? Little things like that, just unstable, wobbly versions of exercises. Let's move to a leg exercise. Maybe I do a squat while I'm standing on like a Bosu ball, that little half dome, right? Or maybe I just do a single leg squat instead of a 2-leg squat. That's going to be unstable, right? So we're picking unstable versions of exercises in our stabilization level. The benefit of that is it's going to teach my brain how to use those muscles properly. Now, I'm not lifting very heavy because obviously it's so unstable. I can't really lift very much weight if it's super wobbly, but that's okay, right? My goal here isn't necessarily to generate maximum strength. My goal is to teach my brain how to move. If I know how to do a chest press with my back on like a wobbly stability ball, I definitely know how to do a chest press when I get onto a solid bench and lift, in a very solid, heavy environment. And that's why you can see this is a staircase, right? We build our foundation on stabilization, right? And then we build on that foundation and we take the stabilization and we turn it into strength. Now it's like, okay, great. My shoulder knows how to perform abduction properly. My shoulder knows how to perform, that's still abduction actually. My body knows how to move the way it's designed to move now, right? So now what I need to do is I need to take that proper form and let's start freaking adding some weight. Let's get the freaking weight up. You know, like let's get heavy, right? Like Kenny, you were just talking about, man, you're working on your deadlifts, right? That's awesome, dude. Like deadlift, one of the best exercises in the gym. That's actually out of all of them, my favorite exercise in the whole gym. Mostly because I have long arms, so I have a bit of an advantage. Although it's funny, like my deadlift has outgrown my freaking grip. I can't. I got my little skinny wrists and they are not keeping up with my legs. That's why I use lifting straps actually. But you know, we look at at the ability to move the proper way, like during our deadlift, right? We, you know, a nice flat, stable, low back, a good tight core that's not allowing me to like move in any wrong direction. And then now I can start adding some weight on and I can do it in a very stable environment. And so now I can start working on, you know, boosting up that 1 rep max in a deadlift or a squat or whatever it happens to be. So now we're not going to do single leg versions of exercises anymore. We are pretty much strictly going to do double leg versions of exercises because we've already developed the stability. And now our goal is to develop the maximal strength side of things. Then once we're able to develop that maximal strength, now it's time to develop maximal power. So now we maybe even drop the reps really low and we get super, super heavy, or maybe we do like a version of an exercise that's super, super explosive. Right. So in the first month, maybe I was doing, you know, like a single leg squat, taught my hip joint, knee joint, ankle joint, and my core, how to stabilize and hold me in position while I'm doing squatting motions. Then I do some barbell squats, you know, in the strength level. And then when I move into the power level, I do like a box jump or a forward jump or just a regular old squat jump or a depth jump, right? Something really explosive. You know, if I'm looking at like, you know, stabilization for like my upper back, maybe I'm doing something like, you know, a TRX pull, you know, those like suspension straps, right? And I've got one leg up off the ground. And then the next month I'm doing like a really heavy, like bent over row, right? And then when I get to the power side of things, you know, I'm doing like heavy explosive, like medicine ball slams, right? You know, using my upper back to slam that medicine ball into the ground as hard as possible. Maybe if I'm doing like a shoulder exercise, you know, I'm standing on one leg doing like a shoulder raise, right? Then the next month I'm doing the exact same thing, but I'm on 2 legs so I can lift a lot heavier. And then the next month I'm trying to be explosive, so I'm doing another, you know, maybe medicine ball scoop toss or something like that, where I'm chucking a medicine ball as far forward as I can, being really, really, really explosive about things. So that's the idea of the OPT model here. Now, that's all we've been talking about now is exercise selection, right? The conversation has entirely been about like, you know, which version of a chest exercise do you choose? Which version of a leg exercise do you choose? But we have not really addressed the different types of reps. And that is where we look at the phases of the OPT model. So we've got 3 levels and we've got 5 phases, okay? Level 1 has 1 phase in it. Level 2 has 3 phases, and level 3 has 1 phase as well. So we're seeing a single phase for these two, but strength, because like I said earlier, it's kind of a big idea. You know, it's a big concept. So it actually gets its 3 separate phases here. So for stabilization endurance, which is the only phase within the stabilization level, we're focusing on like a high number of repetitions at a very low lifting tempo. And the reason that we do that is because, again, go back to the goal of stabilization, right? It's to develop stability. So, you know, and I'm trying to teach my brain how to move. Do you think I'm going to learn how to move if I only do 3 reps? No, I need repeated exposure. So I end up doing a high number of repetitions, probably somewhere between 12 and 20. Can I lift very heavy weight if I'm lifting 12 to 20 reps? Definitely not. So I'm probably going to lift at an intensity of somewhere between like 50 and 70% of my 1 rep max. It's pretty low. You know, it's not very heavy. And then if I'm trying to teach my brain how to do something, should I do it really fast? No, if I want to teach my, you know, if I need to, it's like, you know, it's like that'd be like putting somebody on a bike and be like, hey, it's your first time trying to learn how to bike. So I brought you to this giant hill. I'm going to roll you down it, which will make you go very fast. You'll be fine. That's a terrible way to teach somebody, right? So we focus on like moving nice and slow. Again, high repetitions and a slow tempo gives my brain time to learn how to move properly. Meanwhile, I'm pairing it with that unstable exercise selection. And there we go. I have developed neuromuscular efficiency in that first phase / level of training. But then let's say I want to develop like, and the other thing, because it is a high number of repetitions, we're also developing endurance, which gives us stamina to continue working out in the higher levels of the OPT model. As I continue this workout journey, since I develop like a little bit of endurance, I can handle the more intense phases, right? I can get through a full 60-minute workout, right? So we start with a little bit of like working on our endurance rather than working on like our maximal intensities. Then we're kind of phasing our way out of that idea. And this is where like the strength in the first, this is phase 2 here. Phase 2, which is strength endurance, is the first part of the strength level, but it really is easing its way out of stabilization. I always like to tell people, think of phase 2 as phase like 1.5, because it is kind of taking some of the concepts from stabilization and it's adding them to concepts related to strength. It's kind of a blend between these two phases here. And so this is going to be much heavier weight. It's going to be in a more stable environment, but it actually is going to kind of combine a medium lifting tempo with a slow lifting tempo. And it's going to be a really high number of repetitions, which means a really low number of which means a low amount of intensity. Right. So this is still very much like a really good way to, increase endurance. By now, you guys are probably thinking, okay, we've been talking a lot about endurance here for the last couple of minutes, right? And we've been talking a lot about high repetitions. What does high repetitions result in? Crazy high calorie burns. So these two phases in particular are very relevant to our clients when it comes to weight loss. Then we've got hypertrophy, which is phase 3. Now, phase 3 is right in the middle of the OPT model, right? It's not high repetition, but it's also not like really low repetition. It pretty much is in the middle of everything. And, this is moderate intensity, moderate duration exercise. And this is where we see like maximal muscular growth, right? Like this is where we see like really like gaining lean body mass, right? This is what we're talking about when we talk about like gains with a friggin' Z, and so it's still relatively heavy. You want to lift like much higher, which means that the number of repetitions is going to drop, right? So we went from really high repetitions to medium repetitions here. This is anywhere from like 6 to 12 repetitions, right? So like 6 is it's low, but it's not like as low as like 3. And 12 repetitions is kind of high, but it's not as high as like 15. And so it's right in the middle there. And this is where we really create the maximum inflammatory response, which causes our body to go, holy crap, we need to blow this stuff up. Like we need more cells, or at least bigger ones. So that's our hypertrophy, right? That's this is the muscle mass section, which is also very relevant for our weight loss clients, because we know if we can get them to gain muscle mass, they're going to burn more calories overall. So this is another very relevant phase of the OPT model to our weight loss class. Then we have phase 4 here. This is maximal strength. This is truly the strength part of the strength level here. This is like 1 repetition up to 5 repetitions and no higher. That's super intense, right? If you can do 6 reps, you're lifting too light. You need to lift heavier. That is our maximum strength. So this is where we're really looking at the idea to just get our muscles and our nervous system to be able to lift something from point A to point B. Maybe it's only once or twice, right? And then we shift into the power level. Oh, and this not as relevant for our weight loss clients. Unfortunately, the rest periods in max strength are very long because, again, it is maximum intensity. And the repetitions are very, very low because, again, it's maximal intensity. So because of that, it just doesn't burn very many calories, which not as relevant to our conversation in this course, right? Then we have the power level. So now it's like, okay, we've developed strength. If we had gone like 1 month on each of these, right? Now we've spent the last 3 months really developing our strength, like lifting heavier and heavier and heavier. But now it's time to like, okay, well, let's take some of that strength that we got and let's convert it into like speed, right? Maybe you have a really powerful engine, but it's not able to like get up to speed very, very quickly. So now our goal is to like take that powerful engine, and really develop its like rate, like let's get it to turn over faster. And so like this is where power becomes really relevant here, right? This is where we are looking at, rate of force production. If strength was force production, now we're just trying to do it much quicker. So this is going to be explosive jumping movements, even sometimes even lower repetitions. Maybe you take it all the way down to like, instead of 1 to 5, you're just doing like 3 real heavy reps. You're trying to be as explosive as possible about it. So that's the power level there. This is another one this one is half relevant to our weight loss clients. The great thing about power exercises, if you are doing just explosive power exercises by themselves, they burn a ton of calories, right? Picture doing, 15 squat jumps in a row, your heart rate skyrockets. But in the traditional way that we do the power level, and you guys will learn this later, not today, we actually superset power exercises with maximal strength exercises. And that approach is not very relevant to our weight loss clients because that means extremely heavy weights with pretty heavy bodies as well. So this may not be a very safe thing to do with most of our obese clientele. So, when we look at it, these first 3 phases, and particularly these first 2, are going to be the most relevant parts of our conversation today. Okay. Any questions there, guys? How are my new folks feeling about the OPT model? Does that make sense to everybody? This is probably the most important thing in the entire Sochi program. Knowing the OPT model. 40% of your questions on your 100 questions, like 40 questions on your test, will all be questions about this model here and all the numbers that it can be found within it that we're not learning today. But any questions at all? All righty. Okay, so let's look at some training techniques. How do we get fancy with the OPT model? How do we work within this model to also maximize caloric expenditure? Well, one of the things that's a general rule of thumb that you want to keep in mind that is very effective for burning a massive amount of calories is total body training. So the idea of total body training is going to imply the use of compound exercises where several joints and several muscle groups are trained simultaneously in one exercise. So this is where I cannot tell you how many times I've gotten this comment from my clients where they're like, how come we never do arm stuff? Like I want to work on my biceps and my triceps. It's like, you are totally welcome to do that, but like we have an hour to get as much done as possible, and those are bacon strips compared to your glutes, which is a freaking rump roast, like it just doesn't burn as many calories. It just doesn't do as much work. So I am trying to prioritize your time and focus on the things that are most important to help you reach your weight loss goal. Now, if you change your goal and you tell me you want to tone up your arms, okay, then I will write a different program for you. But as of right now, like with weight loss being our primary objective, I'm going to focus on, squats, lunges, deadlifts, things that are compound movements, right? And then a lot of times I love to get as many compound, multiple parts to an exercise as possible. These are some of the highest burning calorie exercises that you've got in the gym. And one of the added benefits, there's a lot of research that also demonstrates that multi-joint exercises also boost your testosterone and growth hormone levels. So these are things like a dumbbell squat to overhead press. So maybe you're doing something, you've got dumbbells in hand and you squat down nice and low, and then you push that up. I'm working my glutes, right? My quads, a little bit of hamstring work. My core is stabilizing, and I'm getting my shoulders and triceps going all simultaneously with one movement. Or maybe we decide to do like a Romanian deadlift paired up with a bent over row, right? So I've got dumbbells in hand and I would hinge, row, unrow, unhinge. 1, 2, right? This is a glute, hamstring, again, core stabilization, back of the shoulder, bicep, and upper back exercise. Or maybe it's a walking lunge to lateral raise, right? Glutes, quads, hamstrings, core stabilization, and shoulders. All of that happening simultaneously in one exercise, right? So it increases your caloric burn, which is great. It is multi-joint, so it has a huge, awesome benefit on developing a positive hormonal response, right? So those are some of the best exercises that we've got access to in terms of writing a program that is going to maximize caloric expenditure and really get a lot of work done in a very short period of time, right? We've also got power training. Power training is focusing on very explosive movements, right? So power training actually emphasizes eccentric lengthening. And remember, eccentric is the lengthening action of our muscles, right? So my bicep, when it goes back to normal length, when my tricep, is going into a lengthened position, right? And so power training is actually where we do an explosive eccentric followed by an explosive concentric, right? So a dumbbell push press is a really good example of that. Imagine I've got dumbbells in hand. I'm holding them here at my shoulders here. And, they're already like my shoulder is in a shortened position if it's up like this. It's in a lengthened position if it's here, right? So it's already in a slightly lengthened position. But what I can do is I give myself a little dip in the knees and then I drive that up explosively afterwards, right? And so like maybe I do something like this. I go boom, boom, right? So that super explosive, like bouncy action, I'm getting a little bit of like leg work in there as well, right? That's gonna help. Or maybe like a medicine ball, like wall ball. This is a great freaking exercise that, spikes your heart rate like crazy. So basically you get a medicine ball and you're gonna squat and throw it. It's gonna hit the wall. You're gonna catch it and just constantly bounce that back up. Or kettlebell swings, right? You explode up, and then that drops back down. That dropping is a lengthening action followed by a shortening. So lengthening, shortening, lengthening, shortening. That explosive lengthening causes explosive shortening. And again, the big benefit here is it targets your type 2 muscle fibers. Your type 2 muscle fibers burn massive amounts of calories because remember, one of our defining characteristics of type 2 fibers is that they are big, right? So the fact that they are larger means that they are burning more energy. Here's the thing though, I just said it a minute ago, we talked about the power level. Is this relevant to our weight loss clients? Yes, but only if they have worked their way up this freaking staircase. Do not start your clients up here. That is a fantastic, wonderful way to ensure that you injure your client. So we don't want to do that, right? We want to build on a foundation of stability and strength before we ever get to power. But let's say you got a client who has been on a program for a long time and they are closer to their goal. This power training could be the best way for you to really maximize that expenditure right at the end there and really burn a lot of calories, to get them to that last 5 or 15 pounds, right? So one must possess optimum levels of stability and strength before they engage in a power program. So make sure you are building your clients up the OPT model before you get to this power stuff. Now, that was all like, single exercise selections, right? But what about like, the idea of what about like how we arrange these exercises? Well, one of the best ways to ensure that you are getting a massive calorie burn is to do what is called circuit training. Circuit training is a series of exercises that we perform back to back with little to no rest in between. So here's a really good example of like a stabilization circuit, right? And I'm actually going to build one here rather than just show it on the PowerPoint. I need a blank OPT template. Run one. what I want? Yeah. All right. So here's my little blank OPT template here, right? So we're gonna build just a really great, very simple workout for our client, right? So if it's stabilization, that means that they're in phase 1 here, right? So we'll say their name is Bob, right? It is February 1st, well, actually we'll make it January 1st. I always like to do that because it makes it really easy. Say it's January 1st, 2021, right? It's the beginning of the brand new year. Their goal is weight loss, right? And they're in phase 1. This is their first month, right? I'm gonna go ahead and skip the warm up and core stuff and just go straight into the resistance training so you guys can see this circuit. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna pick only stabilization exercises for this first month because it's a brand new client. I need to teach them how to do the exercises first. So we're gonna do a push-up, and we are gonna then also do a single leg bent over row, followed by a single leg shoulder press. Actually, I can zoom in here. Followed by a single leg shoulder press, followed by Bosu ball squat. And then, so now I've got 4 exercises back to back to back to back. Could I get some biceps in there? Sure, I totally could. But I could do this, and then I could just do another 4 exercise circuit and do like a dumbbell chest press. Instead of a single leg bent over, I could do a kneeling lat pull down. Single leg shoulder press, let's do single leg scaption. And then we'll do a single leg Romanian deadlift. There we go. So now I've got like a 2 separate circuits here that my client's going to do, right? And I'm going to do 3 sets of each. I'm going to have them do, let's say 15. We'll do 12 reps for everything here. So that's 6 each because it's single-sided, 6 each, 12, 12, 12, 6 each, 6 each. Okay, now for my tempo, it is stabilization, so I'm going to move really slow here. Don't worry about this tempo. I know I'm not explaining that. Actually, you know what? Because I'm not explaining it, we're going to cheat. We're going to go slow. So I want them moving really slow for all of these repetitions. Now, because it's a circuit, here's the important part, right? The circuit training, they are getting 0 rest in between each of these exercises until they get to the very end. Once they get to the end, they can take 60 seconds of rest. And then I'll put it in the coaching tip to remind my client, perform as a circuit, right? And I'll just go ahead and copy that and make it the same for their other circuit. So now they're getting 8 exercises in their workout. It's a total body routine, which means I'm not really putting too much stress on any one part of the body, right? That's what's really like beneficial here. I'm not over stressing anything. It's not just a chest day, so they're not likely to develop any overuse problems. So that's a stabilization circuit. Any questions on that, guys? Okay, so let's change this up. We're going to keep the format, right? Our client's getting good at the circuit thing. It's working, it's burning lots of calories, but it's a month later. And so we're going to move our client into February. It's February 1st now. They've been at it for 4 weeks. They're crushing it. But now I'm going to put them into phase 2. So now they're going to get in, well, we're going to put them into phase 3. We're going to put them into hypertrophy. So this is a strength exercise selection now. So none of these are relevant anymore. These are all unstable versions of exercises. So now I need to pick stable versions of exercises so that I can add some weight. So no more push-up. Now we're going to change it to a dumbbell chest press, right? On a bench, dumbbells, very stable, very, very heavy. Rather than doing a single leg bent over row, we're going to just do a regular old barbell bent over row, right? Very, very quick, very, very easy. Rather than doing a single leg shoulder press, guess what? Dumbbell shoulder press, which really is just a regular shoulder press, right? 2 legs on the ground, nice and stable. Rather than a Bosu ball squat, we're going to do a barbell squat, right? And guess what? I get to keep all my reps the same except for these single-sided versions. They're just regular versions now. 3 sets. We're going to do it at a medium tempo this time, right? Regular old medium lifting tempo. And that's going to, again, be performed as a circuit. So dumbbell chest press into a bent over row, into a shoulder press, into a barbell squat. Let's change it up here. We already, I used dumbbell chest press a bit ago. So let's now change this. Oh, I did dumbbell chest press in resistance. That should have been stability ball chest press earlier. Sorry, guys. That shouldn't have said dumbbell chest press. That should have been a stabilization version. Now we're going to change this to an incline dumbbell chest press, right? Or I could do chest fly, whatever. Both of them are good. Rather than a kneeling lat pull down, guess what? We're going to do a regular old lat pull down. So we take the kneeling out of it, which makes it more stable and they can lift a little heavier. Rather than single leg scaption, we'll do a just regular old dumbbell scaption. And rather than single leg Romanian deadlift, we'll do a barbell deadlift. And again, we change it to medium and we keep the circuit the same. 0 seconds of rest after every exercise until they get to the end. Another huge calorie burn in terms of you know, a workout. Any questions on the strength version or any questions about why they are different? All right, quiet people. Let's take a look at power, right? So now, instead of a dumbbell chest press, we are going to go back to a push-up exercise, but this time it's going to be clap push-ups. So plyo push-ups. Rather than a barbell bent over row, we'll do a medicine ball slam. Rather than a dumbbell shoulder press, we'll change that to a push press. Oh, actually, you know what? We'll do the wall ball. Rather than a barbell squat, we'll do a box jump, right? Rather than incline dumbbell chest press, we'll do a medicine ball chest pass. Rather than a lat pull down, we will do a medicine ball reverse slam. Rather than dumbbell scaption, we will do a medicine ball scoop toss. And rather than a barbell deadlift, we'll do a kettlebell swing, which I totally just butchered that word. So we'll do a kettlebell swing, right? This time we're going to drop the reps down ever so slightly just because 12 reps is actually a lot. That's actually a lot for explosive movements, so we're going to change it to 10 on everything. And it's not a medium tempo anymore. These are all power movements, so the tempo is now fast. But again, 0 seconds of rest, and then 60 seconds of rest at the end. And there we go, right? Here's the benefit, guys. This is training our cardio in every single version here. We are training our cardiorespiratory system while we are also training our strength system, right? We're developing strength, but we're also developing a little bit of cardio because you are going to be out of breath at the end of this, right? So circuit training is really, really great. It's a super efficient way to burn lots and lots and lots of calories. And Charlie, this is mostly a note for you because I know that you're interested in the boot camp stuff. I used to love doing like circuit training in my boot camps. It was always really, really effective. It was a great way to kind of keep the calorie burn up. And you could very much do, you know, generally we talk about linear periodization. Like you could have kept stabilization every workout, you know, for 4 weeks, right? And then do 4 weeks of strength and then 4 weeks of power. You also could just do stabilization on Monday, the strength circuit on Wednesday, and the power circuit on Friday. You could absolutely do like that undulating periodization as well. And that would be a pretty effective routine. You think about the fact that like you're getting 6 sets per day per body part, right? Chest, but we broke it down, we did 4, right? Chest, back, shoulders, and legs. That's 3 sets of 12. You know, that's 3 sets plus time because it's 2 exercises, 2 separate circuits. So that's really 6 sets per day, 3 days a week. That's 18 total sets. That's perfect in terms of like what we're looking for overall volume. If that, I know I'm explaining really quickly, but I think hopefully that tracks. So that is circuit training, guys. Circuit training is a really great tool in your weight loss arsenal. This is one of the things that I tend to focus on a lot with my clients. I should have changed this to phase 5 and should have changed this to March. Okay. Now let's go ahead and move into a totally different technique here that is also really effective and where you really get a little fancy with all of the sets and reps. So that was circuit training. Now we've got what is called metabolic resistance training. This is where NASA meets CrossFit or NASA meets like boot camps. And it's kind of an all-encompassing term here. When I say metabolic MRT training, it defines any workout that involves what we call high work rate type activities. That just basically means that exercises that have like a super high repetition range, coupled with little to no rest. So these also feel a little bit like circuit training. So I'm sure everybody in here has done some type of workout in like an environment, some type of environment where you're like, we've been describing all day today. Brad really hasn't gone over like 12 repetitions. Right. And that's because I've been focusing primarily on like developing strength. But what about when your coach has you do, 40 ice skaters in a row? And by the end of it, you're like, good God, this burns, right? Or like, when it's like, okay, you're going to do 100 jumping jacks and, 50 burpees, something like that. This is where we're getting into metabolic resistance training. It's all of the kind of generally body weight stuff, although not always. High repetition, high work rate activities, right? Again, like you'll see, let's see here. Let's look up a CrossFit workout. Famous CrossFit WODs. Let's look up a CrossFit WOD here. That's crazy. No, those are all heavy. Okay, here we go. 10 rounds. Captain Tom. Oh, they did one for Captain Tom. Good on you, CrossFit. That's awesome. This guy's a legend. Look him up. All right. I'd start talking about it, I won't stop. So 10 rounds, 30 lunges, 4 devil presses, 19 air. Why 19? 19 air squats, and then 20 double unders. And then directly into 100 burpees. So that's 10 rounds. That means that is 300 lunges overall, right? 190 air squats, 200 double unders. That's a lot of repetitions. That's way more repetitions than you will ever find in regular old like NASM workout, and then like 100 burpees in a row. But that's what we mean when we say metabolic resistance training, right? And this is a really effective way to burn a crap ton of calories. There's a couple different versions that NASM's focusing on here, but I like this. This is my favorite definition. These are creative, fun workouts that involve a lot of like mental challenge here, right? And a lot of like, interesting, like high repetitions. So there are multi-planner sets, which are really kind of fun. Multi-planner sets are where you actually build complexity and build volume by doing multiple different planes of motion. So it's like, imagine if we go back to here, right? And we're doing, this is going to kind of fall between the phases. So we'll just assume phase 3 here. So if we go to this, a multi-planner set would be like, I'm just going to write lunge. I'm going to write, let's see here. Let's do a step up, and then we'll do sprint. Okay. So here's how this is going to work, right? We're going to focus on building through different planes of motion. You guys might remember a little bit. I mentioned them very briefly. We didn't spend a ton of time on it. But there are different planes of motion that we typically move through. There's front to back movements, which is the sagittal plane. There's side to side movements, which is the frontal plane. And then there's twisting movements, which is the transverse plane. Okay. So I'm just writing very, very simple versions here, right? Lunge, step up, sprint, right? We'll call it a jog. So we're going to do 3 sets here. And repetitions, we'll say, we'll just do 20 of everything, right? 20 reps here, 20 Yeah, well, actually, we'll do 20. No, not 20. We'll do 10 each. And we'll do 10 each. So that's 20 total. And then we'll say the jog is 20 yards. Okay. So our tempo we'll say is like controlled. Right. So as fast as possible, but like safe. We'll take 0 seconds of rest and we'll do 60 seconds. So we're kind of like, this is still very much a circuit style. But here's the thing. In the coaching tips, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say sagittal lunge. Well, it'll be like set 1 is a front lunge. Set 2 is a lateral lunge. And set 3 is going to be a curtsy lunge, right? That's the one where you drop your leg back behind your other leg. Same concept here for the step up. Step 1 is going to be a front step up. Step 2 is going to be a lateral step up. And set 3 is going to be a transverse step up. Okay. And then we will do set 1 will be a regular jog. So actually, no, I do want to change it to sprint. Set 1 will be a sprint. Set 2 will be a side shuffle. And set 3 will be a karaoke. Right? So now suddenly we've got a very different workout where we're challenging different parts, right? So for set 1, my client's doing like, maybe forward walking lunges, and then they're doing like a step up on their bench, right? They're just going forward, right? And then they're gonna sprint. But set 2, now they're going to do a side lunge, right? They're gonna look this way and they're gonna do a side step up, right? And then they're going to do a side shuffle as they're running. And then set 3, they're going to do a curtsy lunge, right? So it becomes a twisting motion. They're going to do a transverse step up. So they turn as they come up and turn as they come down. And then they'll do a karaoke as they're sprinting, right? So I'm building complexity from set 1 to set 2 by using multiple planes of motion. And that's kind of fun. It's a fun routine, There's lots of different ways you can set that up in different various versions. And it's always a fun one because your clients are like, oh, their brain gets a little like, how the heck do we do this? And that's a fun like challenge, right? So again, really effective. This is why people like CrossFit. CrossFit is challenging and kind of fun. I mean, like that weird challenge there is a cool way to kind of build in a little bit of complexity. Your client's never going to get bored during your sessions if you're incorporating stuff like this. And sometimes that's a part of writing effective workouts too. And then we've also got cluster sets. So cluster sets are kind of fun. These are high volume sets where you complete as many repetitions as you can until you're done. Step 1, get started. There is no step 2. So I love like cluster sets are literally like, all right, Kenny, 100 burpees, go. And it's like, you probably can't do 100 in a row, but maybe you do like 25 your first time, and then you get a little tired, so you do like 23 your second time, right? And you're just kind of slowly checking them off. Then you do like 16 your third. Take a little break. Take as much break as you need. You're just trying to get this massive volume down. It's like a race. It's a race to the end, And again, you'll see it in CrossFit WODs. I don't know why I closed this because they're a good example. Yeah, so, oh, here it is. Here's the freaking Murph, right? This is a very famous CrossFit WOD. Charlie, have you ever done this? Or anybody, actually, I guess Andres or Kenny or Cody, have you guys ever done a Murph?
I haven't done the Murph.
Nope.
Evil. Friggin' brutal, man. So 1 mile run, 100 pull up, that right there, that's the hard part. Like these two, piece of cake. But this nonsense, ugh. 100 pull-ups, 200 push-ups, 300 air squats, 1 mile run as well. And then you're supposed to do all of it with like a weighted vest of 20 pounds on, which can't, no. I've done a body weight Murph.
It looks a little similar, but not with 200 push-ups.
Right? Ugh. So yeah. So the idea here is it's like no world in which you're gonna do 100 in a row, right? But like this is why you'll see it in CrossFit gyms. Chalk floor. You'll see people will do this on the floor of CrossFit gyms. Okay, well that's hilarious. And what they'll do is no. They'll give you like pieces of chalk and you'll actually like write on the floor, and because they can just wash it later. Yeah, there you go. So you'll see like they'll track like how many reps they'll write how many reps and what round they're on and stuff like that. And it's kind of fun. Again, that's like a fun thing that people kind of enjoy doing that, gives them just a little bit of like weirdness that makes the workout kind of fun. So it's like, okay, I did my 1 mile run and now I'm doing, I got 8 push-ups. I got 8 pull-ups the first time. I got 22 push-ups. I got 40 squats, right? And then like you subtract from how many, and you just work your way to the end until you're finally finished. That is what we call cluster sets, okay? So, if we were to write that in a NASM style, which honestly, this doesn't fit very well in our OPT model here, but we'll do the Murph here, right? So we'd say a 1 mile run, 100 pull-ups. Actually, I guess it would be, yeah, I mean, I guess it'd be pull-ups, push-ups, body weight, squats, 1 mile run, right? And it would be X number of sets, and you would say, obviously that's 1 rep for both of those, but 100, 200, 300, as fast, well, controlled. I like the fact that controlled is the one that really describes like go as fast as you can. Rest, and there really is, we're not talking about rest here, right? And a coaching tip is complete as many repetitions each set as possible until completed with repetitions. And there we go, repetitions. So that is cluster set style of kind of writing workouts. You think this is going to burn a lot of calories? Because I do. Again, not always applicable for every client, right? We're just looking at some ways to kind of maximize things. And then there is simple to complex sets, which is always the most difficult to write. But this is basically you are going to progressively perform more advanced versions of an exercise. So what's kind of fun here, and this is the best version that I've found to write it. Writing simple to complex sets is pretty difficult on a traditional OPT template, but here we'll go, right? So we're going to look at a squat as our first exercise. Then we are going to do a squat to bicep curl. Then we are going to do a squat curl to press, right? That is building complexity. Let's say a deadlift to bent over row, deadlift to bent over row with triceps extension. Okay. So these are very much like kind of a straight set situation here, right? Unless you're going for like ultra high reps and you're kind of blending the concept of simple to complex with cluster. But traditionally, this is a straight set situation. So we'll say 3 sets of everything here, just for the sake of argument. We'll do 15 reps on everything. I'll say medium tempo for everything. And we'll say 60 seconds of rest each time. So what happens is your client is going to maybe have dumbbells in hand, right? And they're going to do, 15 just regular old body weight squats, nothing crazy there. But then on their next set, right after they're done resting, they're going to do a body weight squat into a bicep curl. Then their next set, they're going to do a body weight squat into a bicep curl into a shoulder press, right? And so it becomes like a 4-part movement, or I'm sorry, 3-part movement. They're going to start with just a deadlift, right? Then they're going to go into a deadlift with a row. Then they're going to go into a deadlift with a row with a kickback, right? So we're building complexity through our sets. This is a really good one. It's a fun way to kind of burn some calories. Again, if you did want to do this as a circuit, you would just go like this. And that's kind of fun because if you do this, that means that they're actually doing 45 squats and they're actually doing 30 bicep curls and they're doing, 15 shoulder presses or 45 deadlifts, so now it's like they got to keep moving and it gets, longer and longer and longer, which actually works pretty well if you do want to do that version, because like you're probably, if you're doing like a row into a tricep extension, the tricep extension is going to be a lot lighter than the rowing motion, right? But you're doing twice as many rows. So it actually kind of levels out. Same thing is true of like the deadlift. Like you can deadlift a lot more than you can row, hopefully. Hopefully nobody's upper back is stronger than their glutes. But that's where we're kind of building that in there. And that's going to burn a lot. I mean, think about like how long those dumbbells are going to be. It is going to take you 3 or 4 minutes just to get to the end of it. That's going to be a big calorie burn. So there's that version. If you do this version where you just do straight sets and you let them rest every time, there is still merit here. This will actually come back. Simple to complex sets. We're going to see this again in like 2 more mods. It comes back in our senior class because this is also a really effective way for us to teach senior clients complex versions of exercises. Like rather than trying to teach someone how to do a squat, curl to press, you start by teaching them the squat, then you teach them the curl, then you teach them the press, and you put it all together. So that's another sort of method, even though it's a very, very different population. Okay. Any questions, guys? How we feeling? I want to hear it. Questions, comments, concerns.
Perfect.
All righty. Okay, so let's go ahead and move into talking a little bit more about like, what some of our cardio guidelines are, right? Again, this is going to come back to those fit principles. I told you guys, you're going to see these a million times, get them memorized. Your fit principles, right? These are those tools that help us, in the back of our brain, we're considering our fit principles, but while we're writing our programs, right? First one is frequency. That's the number of training sessions in a timeline. Charlie, earlier I mentioned like 3 days a week would work really well because that would be a maximum of 20 or 18 sets per body part. So not bad. There's intensity, which is the level of demand. Now, if you were to do 18 sets in one day, yeah, you're getting 18 sets per week, but like it's going to turn your muscles into soup and maybe your intensity starts to drop too low. So now it's not effective anymore. So we're starting to, you got to kind of like bring all that into your brain. There's time, which is the length of time spent in activity. Also trying to get 18 sets of one body part. Maybe that's just a really long day. So instead spread it out over the week. The type is the mode of activity, right? So that's like, are you going to choose, like what type of exercise are you focusing on? Dumbbells, barbells, or if we look at cardio, like, are you, running, swimming, biking, whatever. And then there is enjoyment. And here's why all this stuff that we've been talking about today, this is where it really shines. This stuff is fun. And fun is a great way to get people to come back and continually work out. I will always take fun and over like physiologically perfect any day of the week. I will choose a fun workout for my clients, even if I know that it is not necessarily as physiologically effective as something else. Ideally, I like to get the best of both worlds. But if I have to like choose between my client liking something and them hating it, I will always choose liking, because that way they're going to come back more often. If they come back more often, one perfect workout that they hate and decide to never come back after is less effective than 20 workouts that were not quite as effective, but over time, that's way more calories burned. So enjoyment is a huge factor here. Now, when it comes down to that duration and intensity, guys, here's some numbers you got to remember. You will remember these actually from our last class, but we talked about how when we look at like intensity versus duration, if your intensity is really high, you cannot also have high duration. Otherwise you're just asking for an injury. You shouldn't be doing sprints every single day. It's just too much damage to the body. So what we recommend is 150 minutes of moderate intensity activity per week. That is the minimum that the USDA recommends. And then there is 75 minutes of high intensity. If you can't make 150 minutes happen in order to like maintain health, at least you can probably make 75 minutes of high intensity health. That's 15 minutes of like, getting out of breath. I consider out of breath high intensity, and breathy breath where you're just breathing a little bit hard. That's your moderate intensity. So those numbers you're going to want to get memorized. They love to ask you about those numbers. All right, switching out of weights here just a little bit, and looking at some ways to make cardio fun, because cardio is either your favorite or least favorite thing. And so that's why like circuit training is so effective. It's just fun. It's fun and engaging, and people tend to enjoy it more than getting on the treadmill and like just slogging away at it, right? So what are some of our cardio options, right? There is the classic, right? Go step one, start running. There's no step two, right? Like that's your steady state cardio, right? That's sustained bouts of like a fixed intensity. Go get on a treadmill, turn it to 6.0 miles per hour and jog for 45 minutes. It's boring, but it does burn a lot of energy. But it's one of the least effective methods that we've got. So then we've got something that's a little bit more engaging, a little bit more fun. Your aerobic interval training, right? Remember, aerobic means with oxygen, which means this is going to be longer duration, right? So this is going to differ from anaerobic interval training. We're going to use longer, moderate durations here. So the idea here, guys, is that you're not giving yourself very much time to recover, and you're working for long durations. What that long duration is going to do is it's going to drive down the intensity, right? So maybe you can do like a sprint on the treadmill at 10 miles per hour, but you can only keep that up for like 30 seconds. And if you try to do it again in, let's say 30 seconds, right? So you do 30-second sprint at 10 miles per hour, you recover for 30 seconds, you do another 30-second 10 miles. Eventually, like that's pretty high intensity. You might not be able to keep up with that. You may be asking for an injury because that's high intensity with limited rest. Aerobic interval training is in the middle. This is like not high intensity intervals. This isn't HIIT training. This is like MIT training. It's like medium intensity interval training. So we're going to use a work to rest ratio of about 1:1, or maybe even 1:1/2. Maybe your rest period is actually shorter than your work period. And this works really well for making sure that you don't get your intensity super, 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 super high, right? So we went from the lowest intensity, which was that steady state cardio, right? That's really low intensity because it's something you can maintain infinitely for, let's say, 30 minutes, right? Into aerobic interval training, which is slightly more intense, but not intense enough to cause like an overuse injury. So maybe you sprint for 1 minute and then you recover for 1 minute, and then you sprint for 1 minute and you recover for 1 minute, right? If you're doing that, your sprints are not going to be maximal intensity sprints. But then we've got anaerobic interval training. This is your traditional HIIT training that we hear a lot about, high intensity interval training. And this is great. I'm a huge fan. I love both of these actually. They're definitely used for different purposes. Always start, build a foundation, build a little bit more intense, and then get into that HIIT training. This is going to be where we really get intense with things, and work with maximal intensities, which is going to recover maximal rest periods, right? So this is going to be much shorter bouts of exercise, shorter bouts of intense exercise, because you shouldn't be able to keep it up for long durations. That's going to be 15 up to 90. If you're doing 90 seconds is really on the cusp. I think that's pretty freaking long for HIIT training. I like 15 to 60 seconds at the most. But let's say you do a 15-second max intensity sprint, and then you might recover at double that for your rest period. That's the lowest recovery, right? So then you would take 15 seconds on, 30 seconds off. Or maybe you would do a 1-to-3 ratio, which would be 15 seconds on, 45 seconds off. That is my favorite, by the way. And then there's the really intense one, like 1-to-5 ratios. That's like 15 seconds on and a minute and 15 seconds off. But that one right there, that is like where you are literally working as absolutely hard as you can, which has some benefits, right? Because it's such a high intensity, your body gets a really big hormonal boost. You'll make more testosterone, growth hormone, all of that. And so that can be really effective at also generating more EPOC, right? That excess after exercise oxygen consumption. So you might end up with a whole bunch of calories burned over the next 24, 48, 72 hours, right? So that's why HIIT training is so popular. HIIT training is great. We're definitely a big fan. Now, there's a couple ways we can incorporate this that will do all of this for you, right? There's we call multi-mode training, which is kind of a fun way to do cardio. I like to call this like the cardio sampler. And I'll basically use like a different modality within a session. So I'll tell my clients like, all right, we're gonna get an hour of cardio in today, 15 minutes on the spin bike, 15 minutes on the rower, 15 minutes on the treadmill, 15 minutes on the stair climber. That's a fun way to do cardio that keeps your client from getting bored. And it ensures that you're kind of leveling out your volume. It's mixing up different muscles. You're not overtraining any one particular thing. Kind of a fun way to do it. And if you call it the cardio sampler, people think I don't know, they just think it's a fun name. There's also pyramid training, or stepwise training, as it's more commonly called. And this is where you actually just increase your activity level, and you go up and up and up and up and up over the course of like your workout. So it's like, all right, every minute on the minute, you are going to raise it by 1 mile per hour, right? Or every minute on the minute, you're going to raise the incline by 2. Until eventually it's like, it starts off nice and easy, and then it just gets really, really, really difficult towards the end. There's my favorite version, which is what is called fartlek training, which is the most fun name in the world. That's right, fartlek training. It is a Swedish word that means speed play. And so this is mixed tempo training. So this involves mixing different tempos and different energy systems. A really good version of this would be basically creating a cardio routine like this. It would be like you can do a 30-second sprint, and then you're going to do a 30-second recovery, and then you're going to do a 60-second sprint, followed by a 60-second recovery, 90-second sprint, 90-second recovery, go back to 60 seconds, and repeat. And that's your whole routine, right? So what they found, the original version of this was really popular amongst marathoners, and they would have them sprint 400 meters and then jog 400 meters, sprint 800 meters. So that's 1 lap around a track, jog for a lap around the track, jog 2 laps around the track. Sprint 2 laps around the track, jog 2 laps around, sprint 3, jog 3, and then they would like repeat until they did, let's say they were doing 3 miles that day or 4 miles that day or 5, however many miles they were doing in marathon training. And they found that it was a really effective way to train different energy systems and really drop down some marathon times. It was originally really effective for that, but it also torches fat. So really effective there. And then there's like the split routine system, which is where, we encourage our client to basically break their cardio into multiple sessions per day. Maybe they don't do one big cardio session. Maybe instead it's like, hey, go for a 10-minute walk in the morning, go for a 10-minute walk at lunch, and go for a 10-minute walk before dinner. Those are great ways to kind of boost your calorie burn on the same day rather than doing one big session. Okay. So that is sort of how we are going to kind of split all of that up. And those are all different ways that we can do different like types of cardio. Any questions, guys? Questions about the cardio stuff when you're writing routines? Nope. All right. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and dive in to the very last bit here. We're going to talk about the OPT model and kind of work our way through some of those OPT rules I mentioned earlier. But give me 1 second. I'm going to actually kind of run to the bathroom. I don't normally take breaks during class, but like I will be right back. Quick 5-minute bathroom break for everybody. 1 second. Okay, Sorry about that, guys. All right. All right. So let's take a look at all of these, a brief overview of these OPT rules that I mentioned at the beginning of the lesson today. So when we're talking about this, right, we want to make sure, like, we know that the principle of overload is really important, right? We talked about that in our physiology class. We talked about how we have to work at intensities that are high enough to result in adaptation, that the body goes, oh man, I need to get stronger, right? And so that's what the OPT model is for. It's a systematic progression. Make sure that you're not advancing too quickly, but you're also not advancing too slowly. It prepares the body for certain intensities, right? And so initial programs, you know, in the beginning, progress at a rate of about 10% or maybe 5 to 10% of training volume per week. So a lot of times with like brand new clients, you'll want to start with some pretty gentle cardio and then progress that by maybe 10%. So if they're doing 15 minutes of work, maybe take it up to 16 minutes and then 18 minutes until eventually they're maybe doing, you know, 30 straight consistent minutes of cardiovascular exercise. The same thing is true of your exercise intensities, right? Or lifting intensities. You want to start at a relatively low intensity and then you work your way up slowly every week. And so this is where, again, we use NASM's OPT model, right? It's going to give us this systematic progression. It's going to amp up reps and sets and decrease rest or increase rest. It's going to move all the numbers around for you so that you don't have to necessarily consider all of them every time you're writing a workout. So this is where NASM talks a lot about the concept of integrated training. Integrated training is basically incorporating all of the parts of a training program in multiple different planes of motion, rather than just getting really good at, you know, sagittal exercises. Like today, we did mostly say, you know, most of the examples I picked were sagittal exercises because they are, you know, traditional squats, traditional lunges, things like that. It wasn't until we got into the lateral and transverse stuff that we started incorporating like different planes of motion there. So this is where we need to consider that. We also need to make sure that our training program isn't only focused on just like maximum strength. You know, we need to focus on flexibility, core balance, and plyometric capabilities, speed, agility, quickness, resistance training, which is the traditional stuff we usually think of, and then obviously cardio. And so we've got a lot of rules for each of these different things here. Like I said earlier, stabilization is all about focusing on the adaptation of stability. Our job here in this first level of the OPT model is to really address any of our clients' overactive and underactive muscles, right? This is where we're fixing muscle imbalances, we're improving core stabilization, we're preventing tissue overload by ensuring that like we are strengthening ligaments and tendons, like connective tissue, right? And we're establishing proper movement patterns. So most of your clients will start in the stabilization phase. I mean, pretty much every one of your clients, right? And the idea here is that we are focusing on multiple planes of motion, and we are using, you know, you remember I did a whole bunch of single leg exercises, or we had them on a Bosu ball or a stability ball. We call that a proprioceptively enriched environment, which is a big fancy way of saying wobbly. We use a wobbly environment because that's going to train your brain how to move the muscles the way we're supposed to. That's going to give us that neuromuscular control. Okay. So this phase creates optimum levels of stabilization and postural control, and it uses multiplanar. So, you know, all three planes of motion, frontal, sagittal, and transverse. Ow, I just hit my funny bone. And then we also use proprioceptively enriched, and I wrote wobbly environments in order to recruit our stabilizers. Now, the strength level, this is going to focus on the adaptation of force production, right? The ability to lift really, really heavy, right? High levels of force. And so, you know, now that your core and your pelvis can handle these higher loads, we're going to, you know, really get them to higher level, like handle even heavier loads, right? They know how to move properly. Let's teach them how to lift properly while also heavy, right? That's also going to strengthen, you know, the ligaments and tendons even further. And we do this through an increase in the training volume. Again, go back to what we talked about earlier. 10% increase in the load volume, right? Well, we're definitely seeing that in the strength level. It also might tax the glycolytic system more so than our aerobic system, which is nice because that's going to result in hypertrophy, or maybe it will tax the ATP-PC system, which will result in even more greater muscular strength. And we're going to see motor unit recruitment in the nervous system, motor unit firing rate, and motor unit synchronization as well. So 3 phases here, right? The strength endurance phase, which focuses further on improving your stabilization while also, still getting some force production in here. By the way, in strength endurance, we'll talk more about this later, but we are going to incorporate supersets whenever we are doing this. And like I said, you're easing your way out of the stabilization level when you're in strength endurance. And so in strength endurance, we were doing these unstable exercises, and in strength, we're doing stable exercises. Strength endurance is where they come together. So one of the ways we build endurance is you're going to lift real heavy, right? And then you're going to pair that with another exercise for the same muscle, but light and unstable and slow. So I would do like a really heavy, let's say 8 bench presses, and I would rack that bench press and immediately drop to the floor and do 8 really slow push-ups. And that's what's going to give me that endurance, right? Or maybe 8 really heavy barbell squats, rack it, and then 8 squats on a Bosu ball, where it's like really unstable and really slow. So that's how we're going to build that stabilization. Then we've got hypertrophy, which is literally all about like muscular growth, right? So this is going to focus on high volume in order to create maximum inflammation. That inflammation is going to translate into maximum muscular size. And it's an increase in our gains. We'll see maximum strength, which is, maximal strength by increasing force production, right? Again, going back to the nervous system, motor unit recruitment, motor unit firing rate, motor unit synchronization. Not necessarily appropriate for every one of our clients, but is a great way to develop, like, again, the ability to lift something once, like heavy, heavy, heavy training weight. Then we got the power level. This is where we are focusing on the rate of force production, right? So we're increasing our velocity here. This is also going to come back kind of similar to the strength phase, max strength phase, motor unit recruitment, motor unit firing rate, right? Motor unit synchronization. And so only one phase here, further developing that recruitment, firing rate, and synchronization. And we got to remember, we're trying to develop like power here, right? So many people like try to like learn how to dunk a basketball. And they're like, I just, I've been trying to dunk. I jump every day. I'm doing these squat jumps, and it's just not getting me there. And it's like probably the reason why you're only addressing the velocity. Like squat jumps are great because they're super explosive. And yeah, there's a lot of velocity there. But that's only half the equation for power. You got to address the force side of things. So instead of just doing squat jumps, you should be doing heavy barbell squats. Heavy barbell squats plus heavy squat plus explosive squat jumps is what's actually going to give us power. So this is where we do a superset technique, kind of similar to strength endurance, right? I would do a heavy barbell squat. I'd rack it and immediately do 10 squat jumps, or a heavy dumbbell deadlift and then immediately do 10 kettlebell swings, heavy bench press followed by 10 clap push-ups. Instead of slow, now we're going fast, and that gives me maximal power. Now, really quickly, I want to put an asterisk here, just so we're aware, with our weight loss clients, the maximal strength portion is probably not very safe, because again, heavy body weights plus heavy weight is kind of a dangerous mixture. So instead, we will probably often eliminate the force production and just focus on the velocity, which is still somewhat effective, although not perfect. But don't let perfect be the enemy of good. All right, when it comes to cardio, guess what? This actually all expands out even further. There are cardio bits that come along with this whole model, actually. So I'm just going to kind of steal this here and move it and make our own little chart here. So there are 3 levels to cardio that correspond directly with our 3 levels of the OPT. We've got different stages of cardio. You guys might remember when we were talking about assessments the other night, right? And we talked about how we've got stage 1 cardio, right? That is going to consist of zone 1, which is 65 to 75% heart rate max. But then we've got clients who are in the strength level. Well, they qualify for stage 2 cardio, which is going to consist, I need to make this font smaller. Sorry. How does one make font smaller? There we go. So we'll go, if our client's in the stabilization level, they're going to get stage 1 cardio, which is pretty gentle, right? If they are in stage 2, dang it, they're going to qualify for, you know, zones 1 and zone 2 actually, which is that 76 to 85% heart rate max. So they qualify for a slightly more intense cardio routine, right? And then if our client is in the power level, they're going to qualify for stage 3, which is going to actually consist of all of these, right? I totally had a typo in there. Great. Awesome. Love it. I did it again. Right. So a client who is in stage 3, they're going to qualify for zones 1, 2, and 3. And so you'll see like this corresponds pretty well with our OPT model here, right? So going back to this, we have our 3-stage system, right? Stage 1 is zone 1. That's also going to be an RPE. When we remember that scale of 6 to 20, that's an RPE of about 12 to 13, right? This should feel like a walk or a jog. Your client should be able to hold a conversation during zone 1. If your client's in stage 2, they can use zone 2 for work, and then they're going to recover in zone 1. This is that medium intensity I talked about. This is the aerobic interval training. So that's going to be maybe a 14 to 16 on the RPE scale. And then they recover, like I said, in that gentle zone. But then zone 3 is like maximum intensities, right? This is full on sprinting. And then they recover in zones 2 or zones 1. So you can see examples of that here, right? This is what it would actually kind of look like in your session. They'd warm up below zone 1, then do 30 to 60 minutes in zone 1, and then, you know, cool down below zone 1. That's it. Step 1, start running. There's no step 2, you know? But clients in stage 2, you can see it's a little bit more complicated, right? They do 1 minute in zone 2, 3 minutes in zone 1, and they kind of zigzag back and forth there. And then we try to reduce this 3-minute recovery. We try to get it shorter and shorter and shorter until eventually we get to like a 1-to-1 ratio. And then clients in zone 3, even more intense, right? We maybe amp it up into zone 2 here before getting into zone 3, and then zigzagging back and forth, right? So we're just building on our foundation here. We're getting harder and harder and harder with it. So we really like stage training. Stage training is super, super important to incorporate because it ensures that your client's body never gets used to one particular stage or one particular zone. They don't overtrain. And by continually doing that, they never hit a plateau, which is huge. We really like circuit training. Circuit training is a really great way to do cardio while also benefiting from weights. So, you know, if I know that if I'm working with a client and I'm doing like a circuit and I see that they're completely out of breath and they're into zone 3, maybe that circuit's a little bit too intense if they're a brand new client. So then rather than doing just pure circuit training, like no rest between exercises, I give them 15 seconds of rest or 30 seconds of rest, right? I'm just trying to monitor my client's heart rate to make sure that I'm not pushing them too hard, too fast, or that I'm pushing them hard enough, you know? So here's some really good examples of circuit training. These are similar to the ones we built earlier, but maybe do a dumbbell chest press, a row, scaption, curl, tricep, step up, rest. Boom, boom, boom. All of these are stabilization exercises. All of these are strength exercises. All of these are power. Really good examples of circuits that are in there, guys. You can take a look at those. We love circuit training. It has been shown to be just as beneficial as traditional cardio. So for those of you out here who are like, I need to do cardio, and you're like, but I hate cardio, right? Like, I'm sure I got at least one in the call. Cardio is either your favorite or least favorite thing. You don't have to do traditional cardio. You don't have to go and get on a rowing machine for an hour. You know, you can do circuit training. It's a really effective way to burn lots of calories. So this is actually how we might incorporate it into a session. You know, this is a 60-minute session here. We might start with a little bit of flexibility in the beginning, do a little bit of cardio training just to get them on the treadmill, really get the blood pumping, do a little circuit training, get a little bit more cardio at the end, and then do some flexibility and kick them out of the gym. Right? That's a great way to really just kind of amp things up. I love doing, you know, this is great for a beginner client. Because it really is only like 20 to 30 minutes of strength training, and the time flies by for them. Intermediate clients will be a little bit more advanced, right? We're going to incorporate that stage 2 training. Our circuit training will be based a little bit more on strength versions, but that'll be a little bit more intense there. And then our advanced clients, like our power level clients, you know, we get them into the real full on like stage 3 cardio training. That's like a lot of sprinting and stuff. That's the kind of stuff that you do on like a field. This is where we really get super intense about it. Because it is so intense, you'll notice we actually only do stage 2 cardio at the second half. Because that stage 3, we really don't want to revisit that once we've already done it. It's exhausting. So it's probably not super safe for our clients to do every single time. And that's that, guys. It was a lot today, but hopefully kind of fun. You get to see us build some example programs. But we know that exercise has all kinds of benefits. We want to focus on the ones that are going to increase our daily expenditure through excess post-exercise consumption, so EPOC, and we want to also come up with strategies to increase our NEAT levels, right? Get your clients to burn calories throughout the day by staying active after they're out of the gym, right? The OPT model is the best way for us to be able to write programs and design them to be effective and also not to overtrain our clients. And NASM will also have stage training that corresponds with that OPT model, right? Stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3, depending on if your client is in level 1, level 2, or level 3. And that is it. I know it was a really big one today, guys. That was a pretty massive, pretty massive lecture there. But how's everybody feeling? How the 4 of you guys doing? Feeling good?
I'm pretty good, yeah.
Good.
Love it. Andres?
Yeah.
Cool. Well, heck, guys, that's all I got. I'm going to go ahead and let you out of here. Homework. So homework 3 goes up today. It's going to cover today's lesson and yesterday's. So I will say it's not as complicated as it may look, but there are going to be some questions. You're going to need to reference your notes. So, you know, take a look at them. It'll be questions like, you'll see sentences that say, you know, blank has been shown to be just as effective as traditional cardiorespiratory training, right? And we know circuit training, right? Circuit training has been shown to be just as effective as, you know, go for a run. Yeah, what's up, Andres?
Are we on day 5 or is this day 6?
Day 6. It's day 6 PowerPoint 7.
Okay,
So
you're gonna put it on Canvas right now.
Yep. Oh, I missed it this morning. I blew my streak again. I've been putting it up every day before the lectures start. I'm putting it up right now. And I'll replace the video once I get it downloaded. But there's already a video up there. There's the last time I taught this class, the videos. So you'll find your notes. You'll find homework 3. Knock it out, practice it, and yeah. Any other questions?
Oh, good.
All right, fellas. See you tomorrow.